So what does the woodchuck chuck? How about what does the generator generate? Let's choose C for change, key play out, release, and wow, look at all that code. Fortunately, you don't have to know how every piece of the code works yet. You just have to know where to go to change it. The generator tries to put a structure on the output program that follows good programming practices. Look, it even started with a note. A pretty fancy one at that. This note includes the name of the program and the date and time it was created. The presence of this change date line in this syntax in the note is recognized by EasyEdit. If you make changes to the program that you save, EasyEdit will add another change date line so you have a record of when the source code was changed. I'll explain some of the new code you see, as this is as good a place as any to learn about it. You've not seen the verb external before. An external tells Unibase that there's some program code in the external directory, and the program code is named aidvar, with the .et on the end of it, of course. When the parser parses this code, it picks up that program code and parses it as if it were present right at this point in the program. What's in aidvar? Let's call it into another buffer in C. Function key 2, choose buffer 2. Then F10C, and the file we want is in the external subdirectory named aidvar.et. And all we have here is a bunch of declares. Well, why didn't DMAC just put them in the program? We did, with this external statement. It takes up a lot less room, and if we add a variable to the aidvar external, all we have to do is reparse our programs, not go make a coding change in each one. You know what a perform statement does. This one is going to go find the subroutine aidWrite, execute it, and then come back to this statement. When start. That's a conditional. And this one at the beginning of the program is going to go execute subroutine aidStart, then return here, and we're down to this statement. You don't know what when PGM1 is yet, but you can tell it's a conditional, and it should be clear that what this statement is saying, that when the current record is program 1 or format 1, go perform subroutine PGM1. You know what the release verb does. What's release at end? Sometimes you want to execute some code only when the program is through processing all the records. That's what the release at end syntax does. As long as there are more records to come, and yes, Unibase knows this, it acts like a regular release statement, goes to get the next record, and starts execution at the beginning of the program. When the last record has been processed, Unibase takes the @end code, and in this case performs the subroutine aidEnd. When flow returns here, Unibase executes the verb stop, and cleverly enough, the program stops. So the aid generator does a lot of work for us, especially that repetitious typing part that saves you from carpal tunnel syndrome. But the really neat part is in the PGM subroutine. Look at this output statement. Does it look familiar? Let's read our own play program into buffer 3. I'll press function key 2, choose buffer 3, then do F10C, and bring in the file play.et. Here's our output statement. To make it easier to compare, let's mark it and bring it into the playout program. F8M, come down a line, F8M, our lines turn red, then go back to buffer 1, and let's just copy it right here, F8, copy. And these two output statements are virtually identical. We didn't get the literal between the year, month, and day, but the generator had no way of knowing that's what you wanted. So if we had generated this program, all we would have had to do was put in those slashes with literals. Teach, why didn't you tell us about this sooner? Because, student, you had to know what all this code meant, and you wouldn't have appreciated it if you hadn't done it the hard way first. Just remember, the generator can only do so much. You still have to think about what you're doing. Okay, let's fix this output statement. We'll remove this skip, put in our literal, and we'll remove this skip and put in our literal. And we had better get rid of our own two output lines. As you can tell from this code in subroutine PGM1, it's possible to execute a different subroutine from inside this one. And this routine, age show BC, does some housekeeping for us by displaying on the screen the batch being output and how many records it's writing out as it goes. Let's bring in the other code we added so we can test this program with everything we want. Up here, we'll put in our declare of your name. Then let's go back to buffer 3. Let's unmark our output statement and pick up the 3 lines that we want to execute when we start the program. Go back to buffer 1, and the aid generator also has a start routine called aid start, so we'll just go ahead and put our code right after what the aid start routine does. This variable, aid RECL, is the record length, and it's picked up from the standard job and used to skip to the end of the record. Aid BF is the blocking factor. It's calculated from the record size and block size in the standard job. If you're writing to tape, Unibase keeps track of the number of blocks written. The generator also has audit trail information built into it. It's put into whatever device we specify for the environment variable type01 in the unibase.ini file. The install version of Unibase sends the audit trail to Never Never Land. Putting it elsewhere is something you'll learn in Advanced Unibase. We're almost there. We have to test this. F10W to write it, F10X to exit. Before we parse it, we're going to do a change on it again, but we just want to look at something. See the change date line that EasyEdit added. It told us student made those changes on Tuesday, May 2nd. Pretty neat. Let's exit again with F10X. Go parse our program. Remember that it's called play out, not play. We're through. Release to proceed. Got to test it. Help. Help. File input output functions. Output via a standard job. Wait a minute. Forgot something. Before we can test that, let's go back to file definitions. Standard job. Change. Play. Release, release, release. The output program here is still play. And we want to test our new one. That's going to be play out. And release, release. Now, help, help, file input output. With the standard job, play. Let's use batch 001. Field release, release. And it wants the name. Let's tell it we're generator. And we're through. Got to go look at it. Help. System functions. OS access. Field release, release. And change to the temp directory. Type on student. And there's generator. We got a different name. Notice we also got a different date. It's the 2nd of May, not the 1st. But everything else looks pretty much the same. Neat generator. Makes the thought of programming a lot less scary. Do you feel like you're brain dead yet? Probably, but you should feel pretty exultant too.